Welcome, everybody who is joining us. We've just started up the meeting room. Um, we have about 10 people right at this very moment, so we may have a little smaller group, which I actually always find to be a little easier to facilitate conversation for. While we are just waiting a few minutes to get started, anybody willing to say maybe, hey, Jelly, um, say a little bit about how they are, things that are new in their content management world? How's it going, Elise? I will pick on you because I know you a little bit.
Hello. I am well. How are you?
I am good. I have been, among other things, hard at work on the new upcoming Virginia self-help site. So that is exciting. We've got a launch date of mid-May. So that is
Exciting. And
coming.
I actually saw La Help Minnesota in the news today. I got like a
Ooh,
legal aid alert, but I digress. We're good in Colorado. We are meeting with you actually next week, which will be exciting. But
yes.
we have a lot going on. So we are in a transition phase, but also in a ramp up phase, kind of both, working towards a late summer launch for La Help Colorado. And we are working on next stages of what it's going to look like to bring a new developer on board and update our site. And then content, we're finalizing content in 2 weeks with our partners. That'll be done. And moving on to the final stage of content from that is not met by our legal services provider. So we have a lot of moving parts here in Colorado. And just am continually grateful to learn from everyone on this call since I'm pretty new to the project.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Elise. Um, Anybody else, as we're just waiting a minute or two for people who are going to join us, who are joining us, willing to share just kind of a little about themselves? Sorry, about their own state and what's going on, their own projects?
I'll go. Hey y'all, I am Megan. I'm the program manager and staff attorney with the Innovation Lab at Legal Aid of North Carolina. I am like kind of tangentially involved in a lot of web content related things. Obviously, we have our chief communications officer and her team that do more of the technical side of it. But one thing that we've done over the past couple of weeks, because our new kind of online intake and client resource portal has been up for a couple months now statewide. We've been looking at like all of the trends from that and going back through and like
Ooh,
massaging all of the language throughout it to see, okay, we had people aren't quite entering their income right sometimes. So how could we make the language more clear for that? So kind of involved in editing content and that. We're also working on some document automation related to kind of a revamp of our website. And so I know a lot of folks work on that as well. So I'm always curious to hear best tips. And we've been thinking about how, yeah, like distilling the legal information into something that's easy to follow and kind of thinking of the whole user's journey from yes, needing to fill out the form, but kind of what's going on before and after that, as well as how could we use, say, graphics or videos like other multimedia to better, communicate that. So, yeah, one foot in the comms door, as I say, in my role.
absolutely. Um, yes, fantastic. Thank you for that. Yeah, and let's dive in. Our topic for today is thinking about measuring content. So we are content managers, at least that's what our name is. So as we are thinking about creating legal content, how do we learn from content that already exists, or how do we know what's working in quotes in terms of content. And I think let's just kind of kick off a discussion by, so we've done this before for those of you who've joined us. I'm interested in kind of just doing a round robin. to maybe ask each person to spend kind of just a minute or two, so not too long, talking about kind of what comes up for them when they think about measuring content. Are you doing a lot? Are you doing very little? Are there particular things that you are really thinking about? And I am going to go through, oh, this is in no order at all. Hang on a second. I was going to say I was going to do it in alphabetical order by first name, but that is not how I'm seeing this. So, all right, well, I'm going to go in an order that I have no idea is something that you can actually know whether you're coming next. So I apologize for putting people on the spot. Jay, do you want to kick us off? What are you guys thinking in New Hampshire about measuring content?
This is a very hot topic right now because part of our TIG grant is about plain language, and we've been struggling in many ways to measure our articles and how they meet or don't meet plain language. And we started using a free online service called TextBuddy, which used some plain language standards to rate readability and reading level, and ran some of our articles through it, and they failed miserably. And the next thing we did was we used an LSC tool that is intended to help you rewrite content, both in Microsoft Word and Google Docs, and that didn't really make that much difference. Shortening sentences, changing to active didn't make that much difference. At the LSC conference last month, we were in a session on using AI and found a prompt, a long one, that we entered into a number of different LLMs through Poe, which uses ChatGPT and Claude and others, and they passed. They passed really well, but they were totally different. These articles no longer, they had almost no similar content. Sorry, my co-workers here today helping out. I just thought I'd let you know if you see a tail going by. And and so we started the process of sharing it with our subject matter experts and say, wow, this is like 1/3 as long and it is readable and understandable, but it leaves out a lot. Is this okay? And so far, they have added back in some information, but are happy with the shortened versions, which are completely different. So our measurement has gone from 50% readability to upper 80s. And there may be other tools. We looked at Hemingway and a number of others to do the same thing, but they didn't get the plain language through that measurement up high enough. So that's a
Yeah.
hot topic right now.
Yeah, interesting. All right, great. So as we're thinking about measuring things, so measuring readability, so kind of a key thing, really nice case study there. Fantastic. Thank you for that, Jay. And I'm just going to write down. In fact, I'm going to take myself off camera because I need to dive out to get my own pen as the next person goes. So let's try to go a little less in depth than that, though that was really interesting, Jay. I'm just going to write down a list of topics that are interesting that we might be thinking about, things to measure that we can talk about. I'm going to ask Carita, if I'm saying that right, to share a little bit about what this brings up for you. Carita, are you here? Carita Cole. All right, we will skip her. What about Michelle?
Hi, everyone. So my name is Michelle. I'm from Community Legal Services of Mid-Florida. So I've got the lovely Florida-ness, which depending on the day, today happens to be chilly for Florida. As far as website goes, we are currently about to enter our yearly process, which is me going through every page, reaching out to the attorney that quote unquote owns that page, and making sure that everything is up to date. We do this yearly. We also just hired a new director of marketing and communications. For reference, I'm manager, so we just hired a director a couple months ago. So we're getting her up to speed. We also handle social media. We are doing a lot more with video and content. We typically don't put the videos onto our website, but let me caveat that by saying we link them to our YouTube page instead. So a lot of our pages do have video resources, and we are working on updating those because we went through a rebrand a couple years ago. But we link it to YouTube. That way our website doesn't slow down just from the amount of videos we have.
Great. Michelle, what are you? So, our topic today is measuring content. As you think of all those things you are working on, are you measuring any of that? Are there metrics? So, kind of just really quickly, what does the topic of metrics bring up for you?
Yeah, we measure a lot of things. I have a spreadsheet from when I first started of just social media growth for the last 6 years, month over month. We also do similar things with YouTube and Google Analytics. We're checking metrics every month to see what is performing well, what isn't, and how we need to pivot.
Great. Thank you so much. Yes, and I'm definitely picking up on performing well and what that might mean to you. But let's hear from other folks. Karita, great. Sorry. So Karita's mic is not working. Sorry to pick on you. So we will allow you to just listen. Elise, you want to talk a little bit about what metrics brings up for you, what you're doing or thinking about?
Yes, I will say, I think different to most folks on the call, we're at a pretty early stage on what this looks like. So I have been following up with folks from the January conference on metrics. I was fortunate to meet with Susan in Michigan recently, where she kind of walked me through everything Michigan's doing for metrics. Rachel was also kind enough in Ohio to share her time with me on metrics. And so then I got with our contract IT folks who we are setting up what Google Analytics, GA4, and what Looker Studio is going to look like for Law Help Colorado. And then finding out or working through what our survey is going to look like, what we're going to track at initial launch. So we're in the early stages because we don't have any data yet because our website is not live. So we are trying to think through the expertise that everyone else has on what you are tracking so we can figure out what is useful to measure and what is maybe periphery data that will inform us. So in the early stages.
But fantastic. It sounds like, however, you've put a lot of kind of strategic thought into it. So we're excited to hear that. Great. Millie, thoughts on what you're doing in terms of metrics?
Hi, I'm Millie with Community Legal Aid SoCal. And as far as the website's concerned, we're really just starting to look at it and looking at our analytics and seriously trying to assess. We just started having monthly meetings a couple of months ago. So we're in the very early stages of getting together and trying to figure things out and how we want to move forward. We've always kept track of our social media analytics pretty carefully, but we've never really focused in on the website the way we should have. So we're basically in that kind of a place right now, just trying to absorb and hear what others are doing and how we might be able to apply what I learn and what Marilyn, who's here with me, my colleague, what we learn here and see how we can apply it to our program and our website, how we deal with things.
Fantastic. And Marilyn, anything to add to that since you are together with Millie?
Yeah, no, thanks for grouping us together. I don't think so. We just actually received funding for a new eviction diversion project that is pretty like content heavy. And so yeah, just like this will be the first time that we're going to have a lot of like client resources on our website. Our website is mostly just like succinct, general, basic information about our services. We don't have a lot of like toolkits or like handouts the way it sounds like some other organizations do. So again, this is our first time diving into, yeah, really like client heavy information. And so, yeah, just looking forward to gleaning more information on that as we're creating it. You know, we're really focused on like plain language, readability, accessibility as well. But then again, because we are launching it, you know, learning how to track metrics to see like what, you know, what people are using, what's making sense to people and what isn't. So that's just something I would add to the list. Thank you.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you. Megan.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that point because I was thinking about the metrics. At first, I thought of like the Google Analytics and kind of page visits and clicks and things like that. And I think that's very helpful. And I know our Chief Communications Officer tracks that. But I've been trying to figure out a bit more of how to, yeah, how are people actually using the resources that we already have on the website? And especially thinking of with the document automation project, it's like court forms are things that we already have on the website, but they're very static. And so trying to gather feedback, both from users or like our client counsel, but from staff as well, kind of what they see, you know, maybe in the local office as they hand out a custody packet, but then if folks are confused when they're trying to engage with it or something like, you know, how could we revamp that or make that process better? So yeah, I think trying to figure out the not as like quantitative metrics is always tough, and I'd love to hear how other folks are doing that. And yeah, we were doing around our Justice Hub, we have some feedback already coming in from a survey that's like built into the portal itself. We actually just this week have added a couple more places so it prompts users a bit more to actually do it. We kind of just had it hanging out at the side, and if folks elected to do it, and so we're getting more feedback from that. It's still pretty good, but yeah, continuing to see the points where things are confusing or not understanding, in addition to like if any technical glitches are happening as well. So I like Jay, I like the things that you mentioned around how can we run our language through some of these tools and see how we could improve it. Yeah, I think that's what I'm thinking about. I think the other question I have around metrics is thinking like about how we deploy it and communicate it after like a resource or something is built. So we're making sure that it's getting used. And yeah, how to ingrain that kind of in a larger community engagement and outreach strategy that sometimes we're involved in as the people creating content and sometimes not. And so how to like make that handoff happen so we make sure that the things that we do create are successful and being used out across, you know, our whole service area.
Fantastic. Great. So we are at Cami. I apologize. It probably looks like I'm totally jumping around from your perspective. Cami, you want to share what kind of brings up? So kind of the idea of metrics or measuring content?
No, I would say that maybe we're approaching it a little bit differently. I'm with Michigan Indian Legal Services. As part of a PBIF grant, we started an advisory group because we were adding a lot of content to our website specific to tribal and federal Indian law using pro bono attorneys, but we created an advisory board with representatives from all of the communities, the 12 tribes that were represented in some of the urban centers, first reviewing our recent legal needs assessment and the data out of that to choose kind of areas of focus for building out web content. We obviously look at, Google Analytics, but we also have a feedback loop, and it's gone through several ideations, with a feedback survey specifically on our website about content, and we do question, readability. But when things have been drafted, I've run it through, AI and, put in the prompt of like, make this either like at a 5th grade or an 8th grade reading level. And then also always sending it back to people or myself to make sure that it didn't change the content enough that it's, no longer understandable, that it just lost all meaning. And there's definitely times when we've had to change things back because, using the word jurisdiction, isn't necessarily going to be an 8th grade reading level issue, but there isn't really an alternative that's great. And what AI came up with just wasn't meeting the needs. So I think we put that back, or then talked about like the authority of the court, or the correct powers, for the tribe. So we've been very data driven, but I think we approached it differently rather than just looking at analytics. I mean, we definitely look at analytics to see like where the content is and whether or not, we're reaching more people. And over the course of the 2 years, I mean, I think our website traffic more than doubled, and it wasn't just in general, it was specifically on the self-help materials that we were generating. And it was also interesting to see that the content that people were coming to our website for was specifically the tribal law and the federal Indian law issues, rather than some of the other content that we also added that was of more general interest. Like, I don't know. I mean, we did a lot of links to Michigan Legal Help, but we added some stuff about like IT, copyrights, trademarks, and all that. But we weren't getting, hits on that. I mean, so when people are coming to us, it still is very much the tribal law, the federal Indian law issues, which was also very important for us to know that when we're continuing to create content, it really does make sense for us to stick to the stuff that really is the core of our wheelhouse in terms of meeting the needs of our client communities, which obviously our needs assessment had already documented. And with the advisory group, also having them read through content and having them question the language on anything, not only for readability, but for being culturally appropriate. So we've got a mix of different ways to look at things, and it isn't just strictly through online tools, but more kind of a human-centered approach. And we also did through our feedback tool that's on our website, just like a Google Sheets or whatever quizzes. We had suggestions for additional topics to potentially address on our website. And one was, basically to create tribal FOIA or information on the tribal equivalent of FOIA processes, because people were wanting to get records from their own tribes on specific issues, and they were having problems. So they were wanting, step-by-step guides on how to do that. And that's actually a project that we have some interns working on right now. So I don't know, I know we're making a lot of good progress based on that information, but it's not, I don't know, it's not just crunching numbers sort of data. It's also a lot more anecdotal, but more kind of client-centered sort of feedback or client community feedback sort of tools rather than just the Google Analytics. But we're also different than most legal aids in that we are serving specific client communities, tribal communities, and the relationships are just more different, or are different. Yeah, my wonderful grammar there. Anyway, but it is a different dynamic, but we also have to provide services in a little bit different way. So
yeah,
thanks.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you. Let us move to, thank you. So we've got 4 more people. And then I've been pulling out some themes, and we'll talk about that. So Ken, can you just talk just a reminder that we're looking for just a minute or two while we kind of do a little more of a roll call type thing here.
I will
what
be
metrics
super,
bring you?
yeah, I will be super fast here. I'm new to Law Help New York, so I can just share that this is my first time on one of these calls, and we're really excited to delve in and understand the best way that we can be tracking metrics, not only with people interacting with our site, but also interacting with our resources and our content. We do have a lot of content, and we're sort of in the process of having discussions with one of our developers to formulate a more concrete, less ad hoc plan to tracking these kinds of metrics and then putting them to good use. So I'm very happy to be on this call with all these smart people.
Fantastic. Welcome, Ken. Very
Thanks.
excited. Jennifer? Jennifer.
Hi, I'm here. Yep. Sorry about that. I'm sorry I can't be on camera today, and apologize for being late as well. I'm trying to multitask and fit this in and a couple of different things going on. I'm with the Equal Access to Justice Commission here in North Carolina. I see my state colleague, Megan from Legal Aid of North Carolina here, and we are really early in a project. We realized that we distribute resources in different programs, and they aren't always consistent, and we don't do a great job of tracking when they're updated and what's the most recent version. And so we're working on a project to standardize content across different projects and unify that. And that's, again, in the super early stages. So I don't really have anything substantive to add about metrics yet, but I'm excited to, whatever the verb of osmosis, learn by osmosis from everybody else. Thanks.
Fantastic. That's a great point that like how updated your articles are is in fact something that can be measured logically in like days, months, hopefully not years. And yeah, that'd be actually a really interesting metric to be tracking about your stuff in aggregate. So fantastic. And last but certainly not least, Marielle.
Hi everybody. Sorry, I was also late. I was getting lunch right before this. Thank you for having me here. It's one of my first meetings. I'm leading the project for Pennsylvania Legal Aid Network to redesign our statewide legal information site, PA Law Help. So we started in January of this year, but I've been with my organization for 6 managing the website content. Our current website has a lot of content, so our new plan for the redesign is to build from the ground up using editorial guidelines, AI-ready search visibility, and all the things that a lot of you have mentioned, which include accessibility, plain language, all of those things. One of the things that we've been tracking the last few months is also navigation pathways in Google Analytics, trying to see how people drop off and how people engage and interact with our content. And we're trying to see where the gaps are and how people find what they're looking for in our resources. So we're using the freeform version in Google Analytics to see, and it allows us to see different parts of our resources and where people drop off, maybe due to content or maybe due to navigational or web infrastructure limitations. So that's one of the metrics that we've also been using to develop our new content for the website. I'm really excited to be here too.
Fantastic. Yes, so excited to have you. And yeah, to have somebody, I'm not sure that I've met someone from the Pennsylvania site, so excited to have you on. Fantastic. All right. So we've heard a lot of things that people are doing, and it's great, I think, just to get a sense as to the diversity of different things that could be included in the idea of measuring content. So I'd love to delve into a little bit. A couple of people mentioned the idea of a little bit of a survey. And this can be done in a couple different ways. So like, for instance, on the article, I think most people, when they say survey, they mean at the article level, to either it can be just kind of like a thumbs up, thumbs down. It can be a more subtle than that, like a couple of different scores. You can also do a survey as people like exit the site. So to say, what were you looking for today? Did you find it? Something like that. That's more often done as a redesign than done, always. I'm curious. So I heard, I think, Megan, Cami, and now I can't read my own handwriting. Ken, though I don't think that was right, potentially. Anyway, so a third person say that they are either thinking about, have plans for a survey, or are currently using for a survey. I'd love to hear a little more about what you're actually doing to kind of glean that, it's a little bit more qualitative, perhaps, maybe, than analytics. But yeah, it gives you a little different information at least. Anyone willing to share? Actually, I think it was, oh, I'm sorry, I have the wrong list of people. It was actually Megan, Elise, and Kami. So close. Actually, Elise, if you would be so kind, can you talk a little bit about what Ohio is doing, since there's no one from Ohio on the line?
Yes, I will have to go to my Ohio notes from that meeting from a few weeks ago. So give me just a minute, but I will share what we're doing is right now at the bottom, it's article, just like you suggested. It's at the bottom of an article and it says, was this information helpful? Yes or no? That's a measurement now. And then once you click it, so like if you say no, it says thanks for your feedback. If it says yes, then it pops up, would you be willing to share more detail in another survey or something to that effect? It better than that, but that's what it says. I click no, so it's not up, so I forget the exact wording. But for Ohio, it may take me a minute to find let me search Rachel in my notes to find my conversation with her. But there we go. I found out the work they're doing is amazing, right? Because they've been established for a while and she's incredible. Let's see here. They said, I don't know if I have anything specific here on what they are doing as it relates to surveys. We talked a little bit more about user testing, about different advice and their launch of the website, things that they have found useful, the role that they're playing with judges, etc. So I don't have anything specific to surveys.
No problem. Cami, sorry.
I'll share my screen so you guys can just see how ours is set up. Oh, it says sharing's not turned on. The host isn't allowing sharing.
Oh, let me see if I can. Shelly, I don't know if you are monitoring. Can we turn that on? I don't know. This is not my Zoom. Let's assume we can't. Are you able to just talk through it a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I can read the questions. Let me open it up. So, so the first question is, what were you interested in learning about today? And then you can check all the different areas where we have, information from the self-help stuff. So federal Indian law, consumer law, education law, whatever. And then the next question is, did you find information on the legal topic or topics you were looking for? And if not, there's a place for them to fill out what was missing. And then doing like a 1 to 5 range of, was the topic presented in a clear and understandable manner? And then how helpful was the information you looked at? And then the question is, how did you use the information? Then check all that apply, which is, solve a problem, fill out a legal form, represent yourself in a legal proceeding to get more information, preparing to meet with an attorney, understanding my legal rights and obligations, and then specifically asking, do you have additional topics that you would suggest that we include? And then one that says, please leave an email address if you want to participate in a future focus group, and then submit. So it's a pretty short survey. And we have that then on our front page. That's our title. Well, the title page with all the different subtopics. And then on each one of the subtopics, we have a button to get to it, both at the top and the bottom of every page where we have substantive self-help and educational materials. So, and that we found really helpful for getting people to actually respond, was having that button, at the very beginning, and also listing out, it's only like 6 questions, listing that out actually on the button. It's only 6 questions. It's a super quick survey. So, but we've gotten some really good suggestions on additional topics to cover. So.
Yeah. What do you do with that data? Do you just kind of read through it and think about it, or do you have a more substantial process for using it?
The emails come directly to me. So So I read it and then I immediately send it to, our pro bono guy, but we also have a board member on staff who does, I don't know, more data-driven work. She's a professor at Wayne State. So, and then, once a quarter when our advisory committee meets, they're also given that information. So there is more eyes on it than just me. And then, we have actually taken some of the suggested topics and, created more content. One of the suggestions was that they were looking for information more on like contesting a tribal election. I'm like, I'm glad we don't have that stuff on our website because we don't want to get into all of those disputes. But in any event, it's enough to just see what people are actually looking at. But yeah, anytime I get one of those in, I forward it to both the pro bono department and our board member who's really, really into data. So, and so it does get a review and then obviously then being reviewed quarterly with the advisory committee. So I don't know. I mean, we get responses. I don't know. I mean, not tons of responses, but we've received at least 15 in the past year and a half. So, I mean, for us, I mean, we have a lot of traffic, but it's a much smaller program, I mean, we're statewide for Indian law, but we're not like Michigan Legal Help where it's, everybody in the state. So for
Yeah.
us, I mean, that actually isn't a bad turnaround for feedback. So.
Yeah. And I'll say I actually have a fair amount of experience with surveys on websites. Yeah, they're kind of notoriously low feedback. And actually, I would say that is actually kind of a lot of questions that you might get more if you were to cut it down to like, 2 or 3 questions. So fantastic. That's a really interesting example of a survey. Thank you. Anybody else using a survey or have questions for Cami on what she's doing? Megan, I think I had in my notes that you were using a survey. Anything to add on this topic?
Yeah, I was about to chime in, but feel like I've already talked a lot. But I'll give one example and I think I mentioned before that we're using a survey around our Justice Hub, our online intake portal that launched statewide in January. And we have a little bit of I wouldn't say it's a necessarily long survey, but we wanted to get a little bit more than just, like a thumbs up or thumbs down because it is so new. So we have a survey going that's asking folks like on scale, how easy was it to use? Did they understand what's being asked of them? Did they feel like they selected the right legal issue? Do they know what's going to happen next with their application? How long it took them to complete their application? Because time was one of the big goals around us creating the user experience. If they experienced any of these common issues, and then also like a free form box where folks could put in what we could do better. And I would say that has been one of the most helpful places. The quantitative statistics around seeing, okay, 75% of folks are choosing mostly easy on how easy was it to use the hub is great to know. But from that free form box, we've been really able to see and make adjustments to things like the language. If we're seeing a couple of times over that folks were, say, unsure of how to upload their documents but also it's been helpful not just for like the language that's in the hub itself, but also for us to better communicate like what our process is, even like for someone to initially, seek out legal aid help, especially if we're not going to be able to help them with the issue that they do have. And so how to make that clearer, how to connect to resources. And seeing that there's still some misunderstanding around that. So continuing to make that better, as I'm sure we probably all have experienced trying to figure out how to say, we do this or we do that, and we don't do this and we don't do that. Or especially when it's like, we don't necessarily do it, but we have this resource for it, right? Like maybe we don't do it in terms of we take cases on this topic, but here's a resource that we have. So yeah, that has been, it's been helpful so far. and trying to balance that with, you know, there's always comments in there of like, well, why didn't you take my case, or why don't you do this legal area, right? So trying to glean out what we actually can improve on, and what is, you know, maybe we can't actually change the ultimate thing that that user was looking for, but how do we just communicate that better, maybe along the way, so that they have clear expectations and can have a better experience on one of our platforms.
Great. Yeah. And actually, I'll add in myself from experience with so it is a specific client. I don't want to kind of disclose without them being here. But working with so theirs was another, like Elise was talking about. So kind of was this content useful on particular article, so on every article. And then just kind of thinking about, I think it's very useful for really kind of whatever you're doing to think about comparing it over time, and comparing it to other things. So obviously, like, the number of thumbs up and the number of thumbs down for any given article, is that good? Like, who knows? But you can say this one seems to have inspire a lot of thumbs up and very few thumbs down, compared to this other one. Or you can take it as an aggregate measure and you can say, all right, we in general have 79% thumbs up. We would like to increase that. We feel like that is not, at least we'd like it to be going in the right direction. So we're going to, and in fact, one of the things that we were finding really helpful on that client, in fact, I've seen with a couple of clients, is to, it's funny, I actually have a article coming out about this next week. So is the idea of, we were calling it benchmarking, but the idea of actually forecasting in advance to say, all right, we are currently at 79% thumbs up. We seem to be trending upward, and we're putting a lot of work into simplifying articles and making them more helpful. And okay, so we hope to be at 81% thumbs up the end of next month. And that's really helpful, even if it is a wild guess. Like, you have absolutely no idea what to expect in terms of the trend, because then it's something for your future self to look at and to say, oh, well, we thought that this would improve by 2%. All of that work we did, that made it improve by 0.5%. Was that worthwhile? Is this metric not as good as we thought? Like, what do we think about that? What do we reflect upon that? If you don't have anything to compare it to, then it's a lot harder to reflect. Sorry, that was a lot of me not facilitating and just spewing things instead, but possibly some helpful things in the realm of surveys. Fantastic. I'm really interested in also just.
Hey, Laura, I'm so sorry. Can I interrupt and ask you a question about the comparative topic you just raised?
Yes.
How do you, I love that idea. And because with all data and all metrics, the question is, so what, right? And so I think the comparative approach is a really useful one to answer that question. It's not a snapshot, but it's over time. Do you track that for those of us who might be less sophisticated?
Oh, of course.
Is that something that's just you track in a spreadsheet with a snapshot on the same day every month? Or how do you do the comparative approach? Or is there a more sophisticated approach that one would ideally be doing?
So I have not worked with a client where we've moved past like a spreadsheet approach, because so logically, unless you're tracking 80 metrics, and I would argue that you shouldn't be tracking 80 metrics, because there's no way you can actually use 80 metrics to make decisions. So like, okay, you're tracking 8 metrics. Okay, sorry. So if you're doing it at the aggregate level, then yes, just a spreadsheet. There are other things you could do, like you could build like Looker reports or other things that will pull it. So Looker is a tool that it integrates really well with Google Analytics, and then it will also pull other data. So you could pull lots of data together and build dashboards and stuff like that. But it's work. If you're looking article by article, which one could do, probably not at this granular level of like thumbs up, but you could look at, number of people who engaged with anything or something like that, that you're probably going to have to build reports for, just because it's not going to be practical to pull numbers for a bunch of articles every month. That's a lot of time.
That's really helpful. It's good to know that the baseline is as simple as it could be. So thank you.
Yeah, and I am a big fan of keeping things simple at first. Like if you say, okay, I need to build out all of these things in order to get started, you're not going to get started. So it's better to get started with something and build it out over time and make sure you're actually going to use it and it's useful before doing more. Fantastic. I'm a couple of people, as we were kind of talking about what this topic brings up, mentioned the idea of thinking about whether either their site or their articles were performing well. And I'm interested in digging into that a little bit as to what it actually means to you that they are performing well, like whether that is something that you are measuring or something you'd ideally like to measure but don't know how. Actually, maybe I'll ask everybody to go ahead and just type a few thoughts in the chat while we see if there's anybody who's kind of has some thoughts that come to mind to freeform a little bit on what performing well might mean for, let's say, articles. And everybody, write something in the chat as to kind of what you ideally either are tracking or would like to track about articles. Great. So a couple of people talking about time on site being an indicator of, also time on page, an indicator of whether it was read. Whether people, so actually a kind of a variation on that, Marilyn has entered in kind of a yes or no of percentage of people who spent more than 1.5 seconds on a page. So that is kind of an engagement metric. So basically, is it possible that someone read this? Article SEO, absolutely, yes. And let's dig down into that a little bit. Performing well, says Elise, might mean tracking if a resource within an article was clicked on or accessed. Yes, absolutely. So I like, as an engagement metric, the idea of, so either like, what was this thing downloaded, if it's a download, though I don't love downloads in general, or was anything on the page clicked? Anything, especially anything within the text of an article clicked. That one's going to be specialized and a pain to get into, like Google Analytics. Ooh, the interaction between materials and intakes. Cami, are you actually tracking that?
We're trying to find a way to. Both how much do our attorneys send people to stuff on our website, but also to what extent, stuff on our website is then driving people to follow up and do the intake.
Yep.
We're trying to find ways to track that.
It is-
We haven't figured that one out, especially since, well, I mean, I think the only things we've been able to figure out how to do is in our case management system, having, either the intake people or the attorneys track it. But that requires them to actually, put in that data. And I don't know that we've gotten them to completely buy in on the need to do that yet. So,
Yeah.
but, I mean, we have attorneys say, oh yeah, I sent people to the website, blah, 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 blah. And I know that we are getting intakes because of some of the stuff on our website, but in terms of how much is driving what, I don't know. And how much potentially people are able to, with the self-help materials, not need to do an intake. I mean, that would be great data to have, and I have no idea how we would ever get that information, in terms of real numbers.
It is knowable. So it's set up through, you could set up Google Analytics to be able to say, did this, I assume it's the same site, to basically say what article or articles did they look at before they click the intake button. But that's a fair amount of work. So, fantastic. Thank you. Article SEO and GEO. So GEO is the fancy acronym for AI searches. And Jay is saying similarly, use of the content in AI LLMs. So basically thinking about whether articles are helping people find your site, or basically people are able to find the article through these tools. Is anybody currently tracking the difference, so the differential between different articles for such a thing, like to be able to being able to track, oh, this article is a big driver through AI tools or SEO?
We're trying to do that, but we haven't developed a method yet. It's been more of a brainstorming sessions on how we can actually do this, and just seeing how our current articles and content are pulling up in the different AIs. We mostly use Claude and ChatGPT for it, but we've been looking for a way of measuring that. So I know that Google Analytics measures who's referred to our website from AI. We don't have a lot of referrals from, like, we don't see a lot of we're still majorly Google search driven. So, and in this, since we're doing a new website, this is something that we're trying to see how we figure it out. So that is something that would be interesting in seeing how other people are trying to track if they are able to.
Yeah. This is another thing that is possible to track. So you could look at article by article, the source, and then compare. But from a practical perspective, you'd have to be set up. You might be able to set it up in Google Analytics, or more practically, probably pull it into Looker to do it. So you'd either have to have someone pretty data savvy on your team, or hire someone in to kind of make that happen for you. Ohio might be doing that. So I know they do a lot of work with SEO. So yes, and there's another, so it is a really interesting thing to do, because you can then start to, and this is good or bad potentially, but you could start to tune your articles to say, all right, here are 10 big articles that are going to really capture people with these core issues and help them be aware of the site, or like kind of core articles about big issues. All right, so I'm just going to draw attention to a couple of these, and then we will do, the big wrap up. Megan mentioned sharing by other organizations or networks. Absolutely. That one you might have to survey to find, but you could absolutely track sharing in general, which I often do recommend as a metric. So to say, maybe an aggregate, how many people or what percentage of people shared the page, printed the page, clicked any link on the page, things like that. Carita mentioned how often people click an article from search results or just from visiting our homepage. Yes, absolutely. So just actually of the very core number of visits to an article is a surprisingly useful metric, I have found. That it's certainly not the end all be all, but you can say so you can say, oh, this is a very well-performing article. Why is that? Does that make sense? Is this actually what people are interested in? Or is there something about this article that makes it make tons of people come here? So it is certainly at least informative. All right. Grand finale. So into the chat, if you would, just one thing that you are taking away from this conversation, other than thank you everybody for sharing. I think we've got a lot of great thoughts and ideas as to what other people are doing. One thought into the chat, what you're taking away today. Looker Studio. Yes, Looker Studio is, it's free to connect to Google Analytics. Although, so as some people say, have said, free as in puppies. So it's free to get it, not necessarily to set it up. Great. Other things to measure, new ways of thinking. Great. Yes. And certainly don't feel like, if it was mentioned, you should be measuring it. So certainly having a finite number of things that you can actually pay attention to and take action on is as important as measuring all the things. Millie mentioned surveys. Great. All right. Thank you so much for coming. This is a really great group. I'm really honored to facilitate it. Thank you again. Oh, Looker Studio. Oh, I'm glad that was potentially a new tool to some people. That's actually interesting. I can look into the potentially actually looking at Looker Studio in a future thing. Yeah, and Shelley mentions that she appreciates how much people are willing to share in the group. I totally agree. Like, this is such a great community that people are just willing to share what's working for them so that others can learn. Thank you all, and I will look forward to hopefully seeing you next month or a future month.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.